Hi, I'm Joe Gertis, and this is Coffee in the Capitol. Our guest today is State Senator Jake Corman, representing the 34th Senatorial District since 1999, and he's also the Majority Leader of the Pennsylvania State Senate since 2014. Senator, thanks so much for joining us today. I know you're busy.
Joe, thank you. Good to be with you.
Senator, I have to admit, I was kind of looking forward to meeting you in your office. You have a beautiful state capitol office, but of course, circumstances have changed, and we've all had to adapt to a new way of doing business during this pandemic, the state Senate included. Senator, you and your colleagues very quickly stood up an infrastructure that really didn't exist before this emergency, at least not in practice anyway. And that's for the Senate to meet and vote remotely, something our members are learning how to do as well. Tell us how you did that and what kind of challenges did you see standing that up?
But fortunately, the technology exists through Zoom to create a process. So we had to have a session day where we brought all the members in, or at least a quorum of members, so that we could vote to change the rules to allow for remote voting. It's something that we had to do legislatively for local governments as well, is give them the ability to do this. And so we had to vote ourselves the rules of allowing this to be done remotely. And the first couple of times we did it, there was a few bugs. Every now and then, still members leave their microphones on, or there's feedback. There's another microphone on somewhere else, and it provides feedback or echoes. So it's never perfect, but I think we've come a long way. And, I used to be the chair of the Communication Technology Committee, and I know the least about technology. So I don't know how they do this, but they can, and it's worked out pretty well.
Well, I know some of our members have had the hot mic issue as well. And you mentioned Senate Bill 841, which is now Act 15, that among other things helped to clarify some of the remote meeting stuff for local governments so we can meet as well and do so in a safe manner. And we very much appreciate your leadership in helping us get that done. Senator, as this continues to unfold and hopefully we're beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel here, there's going to be big challenges for the state and for all our local governments moving forward. What are some of your thoughts on how to get us back on track?
This virus has infected in different communities differently. Where in the southeast part of the state, our hospitals and medical facilities are under siege in a lot of ways. In the central and western part of the state, as my CEO of my local hospital said, we're all dressed up and no place to go. Because there's not been spread, so there hasn't been the taxation of those medical facilities. So, it's time now to start looking at that. The governor, and understandably so, took a statewide approach to this, and he shut everybody down. And I think even he has now realized, through a lot of pressure from the legislature, that it's time to start opening up again and do it in a way that's safe, that's smart, and allow parts of the communities that don't have these issues to begin to move forward. But we got a long way to go, and the impact of this is going to be felt for some long time.
Right. I know you're working on a lot of things to help get us back on track. One of the things that is due every year is a state budget, typically due July 1st. Senator, we know revenues are going to be down. We know the numbers, the real impact of this thing isn't going to be in for a little while. Well, we do know the overall picture. It's just not going to be pretty. And as you know, you're hearing from local governments as well. They're feeling the pain too. How do we get this budget done without placing, any further burden on the taxpayer?
Well, first of all, we've already received some help from the federal government, and we were able to appropriate out dollars. The governor was to some of the larger counties for COVID-19 cause. It was a significant amount of money. And so those counties down in the southeast, and rightfully so, who had the biggest impact, already have some dollars. And I would hope they're spending through their municipalities in a way that makes sense to offset some of the costs. But back to the Commonwealth's perspective, there's a debate going on in Washington, D.C. right now, whether there should be another bailout bill, so to speak, to allow states to offset some of their revenue loss. We're probably going to be several billion behind in revenue collection. And obviously that puts us in a hole. And the money that has been sent to the states so far, the federal government has put pretty tight strings on it, what we could use it for, wanting us to use it for COVID-19 type of costs, not to offset revenue loss. And, so there's been talk about doing another one. I think they're going to try to work something out just to make sure that states use it for what it's meant for, not like I think that the example I keep hearing is the state of Illinois, are they going to use it to offset their pension problem?
Sure.
The pension problem wasn't created by COVID-19. So I think if they can get to an agreement, that would certainly help us, at least in the short term. The long term is, are we going to open up our economy and be able to create those revenues again for next year's budget?
Right, Senator, you mentioned we're all anxious to get Pennsylvania businesses fired up and to get Pennsylvanians back to work, returning to our normal lives. And much of our efforts, collective efforts, are going to be focused on this to get everything, life and commerce back to normal in the upcoming weeks, months, and maybe even years. Is there anything that you would like to do looking forward to make sure Pennsylvania is ready for the next disaster?
I used to represent the city of Lock Haven, and in the 80s when we had a huge flood, the 70s I guess was, the city of Lock Haven went underwater. They went through difficult times, and what they did is they ultimately built a dike levee system and built a levee. And so when the big flood came in the 90s, which you remember, the snowstorm followed by the rainstorm, they stayed dry. They took proper steps so that disaster didn't happen again for them. I mean, there's no manual for this emergency. I mean, as much as we'd be critical of the governor from time to time, and the powers that he is wielding right now, I mean, he's not operating off a manual either. I mean, he's just trying to do what he thinks is best for the people of Pennsylvania. And so it's important that we as a legislative body review how this all transpired, what we could have done, what we could have done better. Did we step on civil liberties during this process that we shouldn't have? And then hopefully fashion legislation that if this ever happens again, we won't be in this position.
Sure. Finally, Senator, you were in your first term on September 11th, 2001, and you helped guide the Commonwealth through the financial crisis last decade and now this pandemic. What is it about Pennsylvanians and indeed Americans that gives you hope?
Well, there's always a sense of rallying. I mean, you were certainly there in the middle of it, and who you worked for in 2001. And, Governor Ridge, probably wasn't in his plans to move to Washington, D.C., but, he was called upon by his president to move to Washington, D.C. and develop the Homeland Security Office, something that people might not remember 20 years ago didn't exist. And, people step up in time of need and time of emergency. And this is just such an invisible enemy, so to speak, that it's hard to grasp, and when you're being asked just to stay home, that's sort of a hard thing to ask of people. So it's time to get us moving again. But I do think we're going to try to do it in a fashion with the governor, and I applaud the governor for at least, he didn't embrace totally what we had in mind, but he's at least trying to bring it out regionally. And so we want to work with him to make sure that Pennsylvania gets moving again.
Well, we look forward to working with you too, Senator, and that's pretty much all the time we have for you today. Thanks so much for giving us a few moments. I know you're extremely busy, and just want to thank you on behalf of the 1,454 townships of the second class for sharing some insight with us. And be safe, Senator. Thank you.
All right, you take care.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. And remember, if you like what you're seeing, subscribe to PSATS YouTube channel and follow our social media pages for more township video news content. Next Tuesday, look for Dave Talk. And as always, thanks for watching.